We're starting now a new series. We're going to learn Sefer Yetzira. And Sefer Yetzira is at the root of our entire belief system. Everything that we believe is based on Sefer Yetzira. It's based on this wisdom. The entire Torah is written based on this wisdom, because before we get to the Torah, before we even start reading the words, there's a basic question that says, what are words? Who says that words have any authority? What's the power of words? Like, if someone says something, do I need to respect that? Does that mean something? If someone writes something, what is the meaning of that? Where is that coming from? What's the authority of words? Why are letters so powerful? What does it all mean? And so before we even get to the Torah, before someone can come and tell me what's right and wrong, first we have to establish what tool, what authority are you using, and is this a legitimate tool? Is this an accurate way? Is this reliable? If words are said, can I lean on them? Are they going to be there in my time of need? When I'm going to have to face reality, are the words that I'm leaning on going to be able to save me? And so we have to understand the nature of language. We have to understand what is it we are interacting with over here. And this goes back to the beginning, all the way in the beginning, when humans discovered speech. Speech is what makes us unique. Speech is the power that we have to remember our nature. But speech is also the power that we have that can completely disconnect us from our nature. Speech can create an alternative universe where we might think we're experiencing reality, but no, we're not experiencing reality at all. We're just experiencing someone's speech. That's all we're experiencing. Someone gave instructions to our body through speech, and now our body is acting as if that's real. But it's just our body that acts that way because it's the nature of the body that it listens to speech. And so all the way in the beginning of speech, humanity was trying to figure out the nature of it. What does it mean? How does it work? And for the most part, and today we might say, not just for the most part, but pretty much in every case, speech has turned into a false idol. People rely on speech, and they don't know what speech is, and speech is not accurate in the way that they think. It just doesn't work that way. Speech is something else. And so people today, all the people today, in the ancient world, some people, those who weren't wise, took speech to mean something that it is totally not. And as a result, they were living life. Their body was taking orders from that speech as if what they believe is real. And yet the speech that they believed was completely fiction. Speech is not like that. Speech cannot do what they think speech is doing. Speech cannot accurately give over certain things, certain very important things that were not understood properly. It means we're not living life accurately. We're not doing what needs doing. We're not recognizing what's important. We're not realizing the nature of things, of what leads to what. And life is complex. Life is built in a way that we see it in hindsight. We're always looking back at life. While we are living it, we don't understand what's happening, and then we look back and we see what happened. Because as we age, we're getting wiser and wiser. We're getting more and more perspective. And so this is by design. This is not simply because we are foolish. This is by the design. The way that life works is that when we come in, we don't understand it. And as we experience it, we understand it more and more. We realize how little we knew earlier in life. And so language becomes even more important. Language becomes the only thing that we can lean on. If we're going to understand how to do this accurately, the only way that we can know how to do it is if the elders can somehow give over to the younger generation what is going on, what do we need to be busy with, where should we focus, what should we do now as we're young, so that when we get to their place, we're not going to be disappointed in what happened to us. And then we go beyond, and we go beyond. And language is the only way that we can somehow give the right instructions so that we know how to invest our most important asset, life itself, our energy, our time. And then there's the other function of language that comes to passing on wisdom from generation to generation. If we're not using language accurately, all the wisdom that was left for us loses its meaning. All these people gave their time, their life, their energy. If something still exists today in writing, it means that the one who wrote it, he went through a lot of trouble. If it's older, if it's from before the printing press, there was a big process that happened, and then it was important enough that other people spent time in writing it over and copying it over and giving it over until it arrived in our hands. A lot happened. All this wisdom becomes irrelevant if we don't understand the nature of speech. And what is it that speech can tell us, and what is it that speech cannot tell us, because it doesn't work that way, it doesn't exist. And so Sefer Yetzira is ancient wisdom. Sefer Yetzira is a tribute to Avraham Avinu. The wisdom in this Sefer relates to Avraham Avinu. And this makes sense in the history of how the nations came to be, because in the Dor HaFlaga is when the nations created language. This is when the spirit that was originally united in one language, there was one ruach that was united, which means that the brain, the ear that lives and has the united spirit, spoke one language. So you can direct this spirit. The united spirit was available to them because they all spoke into it in one way, in one mind, in one understanding. Then, by the Dor HaFlaga, it's called the generation of separation, because the collective spirit was chopped into 70 pieces. Now there was no longer a unified spirit. The big mind can no longer think as one about humanity. The big mind is getting different messages. Different languages don't understand each other. They're all stimulating their nervous system in different ways, and it's creating conflict within the collective spirit. That was the beginning of wars. That was the beginning of people deeply misunderstanding each other until they're so afraid of each other they're ready to kill or die. And so by the Dor HaFlaga is the generation where we're going to use language to enslave humanity. This was Nimrod. Gibor Tzayid Lifnei Hashem. He was the master at trapping human minds. Lifnei Hashem. means the Great Spirit, the Spirit of Hashem, was now losing the small spirits to Nimrod. He's stealing small spirits from the big spirit. Gibor Tzayid lifnei Hashem. The small spirits went to war with the big spirit, but they were united in their plan. And so the big spirit lets them play. When there's tremendous conflict, when we hurt each other, the big spirit becomes involved in what is happening on this planet. But when we are united, the big spirit will let us figure it out. And so Avraham Avinu, he says, hey, if you're going to brainwash all of them, then who is going to inherit the earth? Who is it all for? They said, what do we care? Nimrod was a very wise man. JUDAISM In, imechavin Nimrod boy. He knows about the Great Spirit. He knows where he gets his power from. He says, I'm going to go to war with him. And I'm going to take the people with me. Humanity is going to war with the Great Spirit. That was civilization. The tribes that were not part of civilization, they were always still searching for the Great Spirit. They still have in their tradition that they worship the Great Spirit. But civilization does not worship the Great Spirit. Civilization worships its own man-made philosophies and ideologies. And so Nimrod, he goes to war with the Creator. This is why it's called Nimrod. Nimrod means let's revolt. Let's rebel. Let's go against. And this is why civilization is so toxic to the planet. It's by design. It's because the heart of its designer was toxic to the planet. Therefore, everything that will come out of this movement is toxic to the planet. It will never turn into being planet friendly. No, something else will arise that will be friendly to the planet, and those humans who are wise enough will transfer to that system. This way, the way that we are doing it, will never become friendly to the planet. It's all built on false assumptions. It's all built on not trusting, on not being united, on not understanding the original will. It's entirely rotten from the foundation up. And so Avraham Avinu says, I'm not going along with that plan. My children are going to be different. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls him my lover. The Great Spirit says, this man is my lover. Why? Ki yedativ lemana sheyitzav es bono ve'es beiso yachra v'shamru derech Hashem. He is going to create a path for the big spirit to reunite with all the small spirits. I know his plan, therefore he's my lover, because he cares about what is happening here. They don't care about what is happening here, they just care about themselves. And so if we wonder why life is the way that it is, if we wonder why things are so difficult, this is directly attributed to Nimrod. This was the plan. This wasn't something that happened by mistake. The plan was to enslave humanity, and that's exactly what the plan is doing. And how are we doing it? By creating an alternative reality with words. It's not real. We just create it. We write laws, we write books, we write whatever it is we decide. We implant it within the brains of the children, and then the children are enslaved to the words that we gave them. Those words cannot do what they proclaim to do. Words don't work that way. And so Avraham Avinu says, I need my children to know the nature of language and how language operates. And this is the wisdom of Sefer Yetzira. And so Sefer Yetzira, it's brought in many places, was written by Rabbi Akiva, but the wisdom was given over back to Avraham Avinu. So Avraham Avinu taught it to his children and to his grandchildren in order to protect them from the other nations that were designed to enslave humanity. And Avraham Avinu taught this wisdom to his son Yitzchak. Yitzchak taught it to Yakov. Yakov taught it to the Shvatim. The Shvatim, Levi, was the most intimate with this wisdom, and he gave it over to his son Kahas, and he gave it over to his son Amram, and he gave it over to his son Moshe. Now Moshe was also in the palace of the pharaohs, and so Moshe didn't only have the holy wisdom, which is the wisdom from the Sefer Yetzira. Moshe also had the lower wisdoms of the dark side, Nimrod's wisdom. Nimrod's wisdom he received from Paro's training. He grew up as a prince when he was adopted by Basia. Paro was the most powerful man in the world. The pharaohs lasted for thousands of years because they were master Nimrods. Paro declared himself a god, a divine being. With the power of words, Paro rose to a place where all of the people under him, millions upon millions of people, were happy to be enslaved by him. That was the power of a pharaoh. The pharaoh was the chosen one of the priests. He wasn't just a man. He was very deeply versed in the power of language and in the power of controlling human minds and the power of manipulation. The priest's duty is to connect us to the greater spirit, but the priests under Nimrod, their duty was to keep their people away from the greater spirit, to make sure that they never approach the greater spirit, so that they're never liberated. Because if there will be a breakout of liberation within the kingdom will fall. If the greater spirit will remember itself within the individuals, they will revolt against the Pharaoh. And this is not to be allowed. This was the duty of the priests, the dark priests. That's why they're called magicians. Khartoumim. Khartoumim means those who wrote in hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs was the original form of writing language. The original form of writing language was in order to indoctrinate the people so that they continuously serve the Pharaoh. And so Moshe Rabbeinu, knowing all the wisdom, he says, hey, I don't work for you, Pharaoh. I work for the big spirit. I work for the source. You can't enslave me. I know your secret. My great-grandfather warned me about you. And he says, my great-grandfather had a plan. He wanted his children to know this wisdom. He wanted them to be free people. And therefore, Paro, you're going to send these people, let them go, because they don't work for you. They're not here to be in conflict with the Great Spirit. They're here to worship the Great Spirit. They belong to Avram. They don't belong to Nimrod. And so this is the great story of Yetziras Mitzrayim. The whole Torah is based on Yetziras Mitzrayim. The whole Torah is given to us so that we can liberate ourselves from the shackles of whatever culture we were enslaved into. so we can liberate our spirit from the spiritual slavery of wrong beliefs. And so the Torah was here to keep this wisdom alive until we're going to be liberated. And so the Torah evolved with us. The Torah became whatever it needed to become in order to keep the order so that we can survive until civilization will run its course. And then everyone will be seeking for an alternative. And then the wisdom will be revealed and save humanity. Avraham Avinu's desire to save humanity is what's going to materialize in the end of days. The end of days that we are experiencing. The end of days where humanity has to face the decisions that it has made over the last thousands of years. The last 3,000 of years have seen humanity make very big decisions. And the Great Spirit has come for a reckoning. This reckoning is a darkness to those who have offended the Great Spirit, and it's a light upon those who have loved and waited for his return. Those who knew the nature of life, those who understood the wisdom, and those who have gone against life, those who have fought the wisdom. In order to explain the Sefer Yetzira, we have the entire Kabbalah. Everything that we received in order to understand this wisdom. This wisdom relates to 32 paths. 32 paths through which the wisdom from beyond has dressed up in order to become what we are experiencing. So these 32 paths are at the very root of creation. They're so close to the root that the name, how we refer to these 32 paths, is Elohim. What we call today God, in our tradition, in the wisdom, is plural. Elohim, multiples. Elohim refers to the 32 forces that are the original dress of the Great Spirit, the transparent spirit that has no distinction. These 32 paths are separated into two categories. 10 sfirot, which are the attributes, the intelligences that activate life, and 22 letters. 22 letters are the vessels within which life appears. And so these 32 are called Elohim. Bereshis bara Elohim, who? The 32 forces that were the original dress of the Great Spirit. And these 32 forces are everything and everywhere. They decide everything that happens. With them, we are constantly in communication. We ask through them, and they answer through us. Everything that happens, every word that I'm saying is being measured by them. And that's why it is the way that it is. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. That's why it means something to you. It's all them. It's all the 32 that are interacting. The intelligence, the attributes, and the vessels are interacting to create. And this is the root of creation. This is the nature of creation. This is from where we receive life. And so language can take us towards them, or language can remove us from them. language can bring us closer to the nature of how things are, and language can create more distance between us and the nature of how things are. And this leads back to our bodies. The 32 forces that are called Elohim are all included in the Tzelem Elohim. Why is it the Tzelem Elohim? Because it's built from these 32 forces. And so, for example, in our spine, the nerves are coming from the brain and are connecting to all the different organs, to all the different functions of the body. And so in the spine, we have 32 pairs of nerves that are going to feed the 32 paths of life that are giving life to the body. And so there we have the 32. Also in our teeth, we have the 32 represented there. And so the 32 are everywhere. Everything that exists is somehow related. Somehow it's coming through a path. Every animal has different balances between these forces, and which force is on top of which force is stronger than which force is more and which force is less. And man is the combination of all. And so the 32 forces create the inanimate, the plant, the animal, and then together all the spirits of all these, they all come together to create man. Nase Odom, all of us together, everything that was created till now, all the spirits together, Nase Odom, we're going to become a man. Because man is now going to be a olam katan, a small world where everything that exists within the world exists within man. Everything that gets activated within man is activating within the world. All the spirit that man creates, they're all going into the world and they're directing the world, because man and world are correlating to each other in every detail. And so in man himself, we'll see as the big clock of the zodiac and the planets keep turning, the man that's being created by the big spirit is slightly different based on the location of the planets and the signs, the astrological signs. All of them are creating together the vibrations that come together to create a dress for the Great Spirit. But as the clock moves, different forms of the Great Spirit will appear. And the form that will be taken on by the Great Spirit is not simply dependent on the zodiac. It's even more dependent on the human that's creating. The humans that are involved in the creation, their spirit in the time of creation is what's pulling spirit from the Great Spirit. And so the zodiac is going to design the body based specifically on the vibrations of that time. But the spirit that will appear in that body, this is dependent on the spirit that is residing within those who are creating the body. And so there's two parts to the creation. And the higher, the deeper, more important part of the creation is entirely dependent on the human. And so through this wisdom, Avram creates a child that's unlike any other child. Avram was a miracle. On him the pasuk says, Mi yitin tor mitomei aloi echad. Who can make a pure spirit out of an impure spirit? Terach was working for Nimrod. Terach was a separated spirit that was in conflict with the Great Spirit. Who can give a pure one from an impure one? How does a pure spirit come from an impure spirit? Aloi echad. The big spirit can even do that. That was a miracle. But Yitzchak came because Avram knew how to bring him. through the wisdom of the Sefer Yetzira, Avram knew which spirit does he want to invite that should come into that body. And so this is why when he wanted to save humanity, he said to the Great Spirit, you haven't given me the ability to create seed. And Lila Nasata Zora, if I can't create seed, how am I going to create this perfect home for you, the way that you desire? And so then it came to be. Yitzchak creates Yakov, a perfect spirit. There was some areas within that spirit, also in Avram, also in Yitzchak, that had to be separated. In Avram and Yishmael, and Yitzchak and Yosef. Because they represented an attribute that's in its own right cannot exist on this planet. And so when that attribute appears on this planet, it can't really exist there. There's some parts of it that can't be digested. Not the right to the extreme and not the left to the extreme. Avram is chesed, Yitzchak is din. Both of them, the world cannot carry. But then comes Yakov. Yakov is in the middle. He has both. He has the right and he has the left. And so he has all his children, all the seed that he brings in is pure, is accurate. Shiftayah, they represent the Great Spirit. They represent the 12 signs of the zodiac. Each one, just like the signs of the zodiac, they were created by the Great Spirit, and when the Great Spirit dresses up in them, this is exactly how he wants to be in them in order to create us. So too, when the Great Spirit, dresses up in these tribes, he is exactly as he wants to be. Each one represents his role perfectly. And so from this special seed comes a special people. Why are we special? Because they knew how to create seed at a time when it was very important. That was the time when the nations were being distinguished. Each one created in their own way. Each one created the spirit in their own form. Those spirits were in conflict with the Great Spirit. This seed is a home for the spirit that is aligned with the Great Spirit. A spirit that clings to that Great Spirit, he cannot live, he cannot be unless he is attached to that Great Spirit. If we take this seed and we make it go against the Great Spirit, it breaks. It cannot live like that. It cannot. It becomes corrupt. It becomes completely desensitized to who it is and to how it's supposed to be. It forgets itself. This is the nature of the seed. The seed that was created according to the wisdom that understands how the Great Spirit dressed up into 32 forces in order to create everything that has been created. And so when it says, Vayisalech Avram lifnei Elohim, Avram is going before the divine, what does it mean? It means he is becoming intimate with these forces, he is learning their ways, and he is becoming one with them. There should be no conflict between him and them. Unlike the Ovda Avodah Kechov Mazolis, those who worship the planets and the signs, what do? They choose certain parts that they're going to indulge in and certain parts they're going to neglect. Avraham Avinu is equally loyal to all parts. And so the nations, they might choose the god of war. They might choose certain forces within the 32 that with these forces they want to become very intimate. They want their power. They want to get the benefits of these forces. But they neglect different forces. They forget how to love. They forget how to coexist. They forget how to be refined. And so they've gained favor with certain forces, but they've lost access to other forces. They've neglected the Great Spirit. They've neglected the purpose of the united all, which is the reason why everything is. And so that's called avodas kechovim u'mazoles. And Avraham Avinu says, "Vayotza esa achutza," he took him out of the kechov mazoles. He says, "No, these are not for you. Don't worship them. Worship the one who made them, the one who dressed up in them." So umar manechem, lift your eyes and see, wow, so many stars to create us. So many things are happening in order to be the way that we are. Umi bara ele. Think about who dressed up as all these in order to do this. You know who? That spirit, that very spirit that you're dressing up in this moment with your thoughts and your feelings and your sensations. That same spirit, that there. Go back to there. That's what Avraham Avinu found. So the mi bara ele, mi and ele together, Elohim, the 32 forces. Who created? Only they. The 10 spheres, the holy name, the one who is animating everything that moves, and the 22 letters, the vessels that receive his movement. What resides within and moves, the life that's alive, what does it respond to? It responds to a very specific formula. That formula, that's the name, that's how you call it. Every time I say a word, I'm calling it. I said a word, now in your mind there is a spirit based on what I said. So who did I call? I called your spirit. I called them in a very specific way. But if I'm saying the words that are bringing you closer to the Great Spirit, then those words are actually uniting you with the Spirit. I'm calling upon Him and I'm calling the real one. But if I say words that are in conflict with the Great Spirit, who am I calling? Calling a strange spirit. I'm calling spirit because I'm saying words, but I'm calling a strange spirit. You shall appear. And so based on what I'm saying, I'm calling the spirit. And I'm calling the spirit using the 32 forces. I'm using them also because I'm using letters and vowels. Those are the 32 forces. I'm using them also because I'm using emotions. I'm using intelligence. I'm using physical body parts. I'm using the elements, the water, the heat, the air. All of it is moving over here. Everything is coming together. This is how I'm calling the spirit. And the spirit appears all through the 32. Everywhere. Only that. We're not allowed to believe that there is anything else. There can be nothing else. Hashem, the midas that are moving within creation, Hu Elohim, He Himself dressed up as the 32, Ein oid milvadoi. There is nothing else. Don't you start imagining things? Oh, but someone said, words cannot change this fact. Words come way later. This is the way it is. Don't you imagine things? Words are much later. We're here before creation. If we imagine, the body reacts as if it's real. The body doesn't know the difference. Technology makes us imagine. When we look at our phones, we're imagining things that are not there. We've lost the distinction between real and imagined. It's not just words. Words was the original one. They say artificial intelligence might take over the planet, but this already happened a long time ago. The first artificial intelligence was language. And specifically writing. And writing most certainly took over the planet a long time ago. Humans haven't been thinking, they've been reading. We don't know what humans today think. They can tell us what everybody thought before them, but they don't really think. And so whose intelligence is it? I don't know if we should call it artificial intelligence. It's mostly a lack of intelligence. But it's certainly artificial. It's not who we are. It's not the spirit live telling us right from wrong. It's not the spirit live telling us what it desires, what it wants, what it loves, what it cares for. Certainly not that. It's a bunch of information crunching. Language has been taken to a place where it simply cannot be. Language cannot describe the realms that it proclaims to describe. And people live based on that as if it's real. Then they will come back to the Great Spirit and they will realize that they were living under the spell of a very low spirit. Very simple words that were obvious they were not real. It simply never looked. It believed it already at the age of 4 or 5, and it never reviewed with a more mature brain to see, hang on, okay, so who said, how did he know, what does it mean, where does it live, how do you approach it? There was a lot missing, and yet it surrendered to that as if it's real. But that doesn't exist. This is a violation of the 32 forces get very offended when we believe in other things that don't exist. Why? Because then our brain is hijacked. Then our body is hijacked. Our spirit is hijacked. Then where is it going to dwell? The collective wants to live in the individuals. If the individual is living in some type of an illusion, where is the collective going to live? Where is the big spirit going to enter? And so he's El Kanoi. He's a jealous God. The 32 forces are jealous if you are dabbling in things that don't really exist, if you surrender to things that don't exist, if you bow down to things that don't exist, if you bow down to things you don't understand, if you don't question before you bow. The 32 forces are offended. You shouldn't have other gods. Don't make a form say, oh, this is what a human being is. You don't know what a human being is. No one knows what a human being is. Don't be a fool. People for generations together were working to figure it out and they didn't get too far. And you think you figured it out just because you got some words? Don't think, don't imagine that you know. You don't know. No one knew. Thinking you know is the most dangerous mistake you can make. Not even spirits. Just the big one that's everything. That's who you're loyal to. Anyone that wants to narrow it down, be careful. He's chopping you off from something very important. This is what we represent. We don't represent, when we say Elehei Avram, Elehei Yitzchak, Elehei Yakov, we're not saying their God and not someone else's. We're saying they understood who the real God is. I mean what they meant. But who is that real God? He's everyone's God. He's the one that made everyone. He's the one that makes everything. He's the one that is. He's the only one that is. He's the one that is everything. And so that God, who's that God? He's the one that acts within everything that happens. If something happened, that God was somehow involved. How is he involved? Through one of the 32 lanes, or maybe more. Life got dressed up somehow through these 32 lanes, and therefore it came out that way. God did it. Everything happened like that. Everything. There was never anything that came from anywhere else. Moshe Rabbeinu did Nisim. How did he do Nisim? Through the power of these 32 forces. There's no other way. There's nothing else. There can be nothing else. Where are we going to find these 32 forces? In the Tzelem Elohim. This is what it means to be B'Tzelem Elohim. It means he gave you his Tzelem, his Dmut. Just like he is. And he makes the world exactly like that. You are, and you make your reality. He dresses up how you dress him up. You speak into the Spirit, now the Spirit will pretend you're right. And so language is at the root of what went wrong with humanity. The Nachash, the one that wanted Adam Rishon, the snake that wanted Adam Rishon to veer off the path. What's his koyach? Lashon hara, evil speech. When he appears in us, when we're in a bad mood, the snake takes over. How does he come out? Lashon hara, evil speech. Internal speech, everything is wrong, you're wrong, it's all wrong. Or, if we're not careful, external speech. Could be very manipulative, could be sabotaging very important things. But it's the snake at work, that same snake that got in back then. The snake that's in conflict with the source. His job is to separate between the big spirit and the small spirits. That's his entire enjoyment. His food he doesn't enjoy. It always stays the same. When does he enjoy? When there's conflict. The snake kills not because he's hungry. He kills because he enjoys it. That's his nature. And so, the tongue either belongs to Lashon HaKodesh, and then it's creating a home for the greater spirit, like the Mishkan. Yudai Betzalel, Litzaref Oisis, Sheniv Ben Shemayim V'Aretz. He speaks Lashon HaKodesh. Or it's the snake talking. He's creating some type of a conflict with the greater spirit. And so all the other languages other than Lashon HaKodesh are called Toma. It's a Ruach HaToma. Every other language other than Lashon HaKodesh is called a Ruach HaToma. Why? It doesn't unite you with the greater spirit. That's not what it was designed to do. What's so bad about it? Oh, if you weren't so used to a Ruach HaToma, you wouldn't ask that question. When we dwell within the Ruach HaToma, what's so bad about it? I don't know any better. What's so bad about it? Do you know what a human being is supposed to be? Do you know what this world is supposed to look like? Do you think suffering is acceptable? That so many humans suffer? You think that's okay? No. It's only because there's a Ruach HaToma. That's why it happens. When we will rediscover the wisdom, when the wisdom will be far and wide, and people will remember themselves. The greater spirit will be remembered within the individual spirits. There it says, "Ve'asura chatuma aver min haaretz." No more chatuma. People will wake up. People will realize how important it is. More important than anything that could possibly happen in individual life. An individual life is a joke compared to what's going on in the collective. The collective is the reason why every individual exists. So Oz, Efa Chalam Sofe Brura, Likre Kulam B'Shem Hashem. We're going to go back to speaking Lashon HaKodesh. The other nations will beg us to teach them our language that guides the spirit back to the original spirit of the Elohim, and through that attaches it to the greater spirit, the one that dwells within all, the one that created everything that exists, the one that moves in everything that moves, the one that's within and surrounds all the worlds. May we get to see this materialize in our days.